Okay, yeah, it says we are live. Hello, and thanks so much for joining our Facebook Live today. We're focusing on summer survival tips today. So just going to let people jump on and double check that all the tech is working before we get started into a topical topic, I've got to say. So yeah, just drop us a line, let us know where you're listening from, give us a little wave, and yeah, we'll get started. And I will introduce Laura, who's with us from Equilibrium Products. So really pleased to have you here, Laura. How are you doing?
I'm good, thank you. Enjoying the very topical sunshine that has appeared where I live, at least, and it looks like it's winging its way around the UK based on what I've been seeing on Instagram today. So yeah, good, thank you.
Yeah, we hope so. So we've got some great info to share with you tonight about around hydration, how to protect from heat, about UV, flies and midges. We'll be looking at a little bit about internal parasites. We've got some little bits about field management, dung beetles as well in there, and then about routine through summer. So how do we really go about keeping our horses healthy and their diet and weight management in check as well? So yeah, really pleased to be joining you tonight. I mean, both companies really about horse health, research, science, best practice is what we're kind of rooted in. So we really want to be sharing that with you tonight from the work that we've done, and those expanses of topics to cover. So yeah, but we're looking really timely. We've had news reports today, Laura. You're just looking at some of the forecasts.
Yeah. I mean, the forecasts for the week and particularly Friday, where I live, I've just looked, has increased from what was already looking hot at 29 to now it says 32. So, coming from mid-20s up to 32 will be a shock for us. Definitely a shock for the horses. So, that will have potential impacts with how we actually might want to think about managing ourselves to get through it and our horses over the next few days. So very, very timely. When we talked about surviving summer, I don't think we meant surviving what looks like a short term but pretty significant heat wave.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I don't think we're going to get close to that in Northumberland, but which I'm quite glad. I'm not built for the heat either, but I'm still going to be taking these into consideration. So yeah, a little bit of housekeeping. If you've got any questions, please pop them in the below in the comments. We'll do our best to get to them. And then also we've got a little reward for our people who are joining us live tonight, haven't we? Some brilliant little spot prizes.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. So we've got some spot prizes to give away. And I think what we're going to do is pick some live viewers. So for you to win, I think Equilibrium, we're going to give a fly mask of your choice. And Claire, you guys have got a lovely Westgate goodie bag.
We have. Yep, that's right.
So if you want to be in with a chance to win one of those spot prizes, we just need you to pop a comment now and let us know where you're from and how many horses you look after. Be interesting to see where you are, and actually if you know your temperature for Friday, then it'll be interesting to see where you guys are. I'm sure there'll be some parts of the country will be warmer than others, and I know Kat is behind the scenes and she will kind of pick that random draw before we finish the live this evening.
Fabulous, that's great. So yeah, pop your comments in the chat and we'll look forward to reading those, and then let's jump in. So yeah, I mean, how well do horses cope there, Laura?
Yeah, so it's a good question, and I think there's no doubt being larger animals, horses tend to struggle to cool down, maybe as well as smaller animals. We know that then health conditions can occur. So in simple terms, no different to humans, there is possibility of heat stroke. Of course, dehydration is possible. And, at the extreme end, you can see horses that colic as a result of, being too warm. I thought it was really interesting. Horses can drink up to 50 litres of water per day in the hot weather. So, when we have got extreme weather or just longer periods of warm weather, I think it is making sure that we're prepared for that, making sure that also as well, the water in the stable can become warm I personally really dislike warm drinks. So I think horses are the same. If the water can perhaps pick up the temperature, be a little bit warm, it might become unpalatable if it's stood around, and it's likely to become unpalatable much quicker when we've got these warm temperatures. So hopefully making sure that horses have got access to sort of fresh water is a bit of a given, but it is just worth bearing in mind that they're going to drink more water. It's probably going to need to be changed more regularly to make sure we can kind of keep it nice and fresh for them.
And is there anything we can do to make them drink, to encourage that?
Yeah, so I think some of the things that, we can do as horse owners, such as soaking or steaming hay. We know that lots of us perhaps use those techniques to help with, calorie intake, but it's also really, really useful when it comes to getting more water into your horse. Adding a mint or sort of apple juice to your water to encourage the horse to drink. I've seen lots of horse owners using things like apples as well in the water, almost a sort of bit of apple bobbing. So however you can try and find a way to increase water into your horse will be useful. And, mint flavor, apple flavor into the water. I know certainly for my horse, that really does encourage him to drink. And then therefore I have more confidence that they're getting the right amount of water intake.
So dehydration is something to be really aware of. I mean, what does that look like in a horse?
Yeah, so, it can occur obviously because the horses are losing more water. So perhaps they're sweating more or drinking less. So we know that it comes as a direct result of the amount of water that they are intaking versus what they're kind of using. So I suppose the starting point is to make sure that what's normal for your horse, and then looking out for signs of dehydration. So there might be reduced droppings, they might be more tired than usual, dry skin, particularly sort of dry mouth around the edges. A more darker urine may be a sign, perhaps reduced urine as well. Dull eyes, gums that perhaps are dark in color. So there's a few different things to kind of keep an eye out. And what we're also seeing is the result of particularly if horses are sweating more, that they are potentially kind of deficient in things like sodium, potassium. They're losing the salts. Very, very similar to us, when we are losing through perhaps sweating in the gym, if we're that inclined, we need to make sure that we're kind of topping up those basic salts and minerals.
Fantastic. Yeah. And well, as a very pale person, sun protection again is something that is quite hot on my list.
Yes.
What else is that something we need to be concerned about?
Yeah, and I think horses are the same, aren't they? We know that UV rays can be harmful for a few reasons. Of course, not just because of the damage that the sun can do, to the horse. So things like, physically burning the skin, particularly horses with pink nose. So the horse in the photo has got a particularly large pink nose. So he's going to be much more susceptible to getting kind of sunburn on the end of his nose. If they're out in the sun for long periods of time, particularly again with darker horses, you might see sun damage. And that's just from sort of bleaching from being in the sun. Of course, the sun can lead to more serious conditions as well. So we can get photosensitization, which is a condition that kind of causes skin sensitivity to ultraviolet, the UV rays. And so, when we're looking at our horses, there's a few kind of things to bear in mind, but, areas that tend to be effective, might be those lighter areas particularly in the skin. And then, of course, in terms of sun damage, if we don't think about the body, of course, horses perhaps with things like uveitis are going to be more sensitive to the light. So there's quite a lot from a UV perspective that might be quite minor. But of course, if sunburn was left over a period of days and weeks, you know, having been burnt myself a few times, you know, when that builds, that does get very, very painful. And likewise with a horse, you know, over a period of time, that's going to scab, perhaps scar. And of course, anything that is scabbing has got then a risk of infection. So something quite minor can become quite significant, can't it?
Oh, yeah, it really can. Great point. I think Maddie's asking, does it actually help to soak horses with cool water? And we're going to go on actually next and look at, well, you know, we protect them. How do we keep them cool as well?
Perfectly timed, Maddie. So yeah, I feel like we planted that question, but yeah, really, really good question and really good point. So fly sheets are seen as being helpful to help cool horses during the hot months. And of course, you know, a fly sheet is going to be helpful to reduce the effect of bitings, midges. You know, some horses can be really adversely affected from the little midge bites that they get. We definitely would encourage people to consider wetting the fly rug while it's on the horse. And you'll see from this graph here, so this isn't something that Equilibrium has generated. This has come from Dr. David Marlin. He's a well-known scientist in the trade. Lots of you, I'm sure, will know of him. But effectively, without getting too scientific about it, what you can see there is the blue dots show what happened to the temperature of the horse. And so what you get by putting cold water onto a fly rug is a very significant, quick reducing temperature in the horse and in the horse's body. But what you can see is, as though the temperature does go back up, you can see that it does sort of stay slightly below that temperature that we started with. So for me, thinking about us as humans, you know, we would perhaps go and stand through into some shade. We might even jump in the shower. So being able to wet your horse or the horse's fly rug is a really, really useful way of cooling them down. And of course, linked into then thinking about how we can cool the horse down, how we can protect them from that sun damage and UV rays and just the heat. Fly masks are a really great option. Lots of horse owners use fly masks, not just for protection from the midges, but from UV rays too. And of course, then it's worth considering, can you switch your horse's routine around? And again, you know, lots of horse owners would already do that, but perhaps if you've got a really nice, well-ventilated stable, perhaps that's a cooler option for your horse during the day to consider. So, you know, there are ways in which we, if they're in the sun, we can kind of help them and keep them comfortable, but perhaps we can also then consider removing them from the sort of heat of the midday sun. And of course, if, like me, you're having to manage your horse's weight, then, you know, by switching that routine around, there might be additional benefits to lower grass sugar levels, you know, overnight as well. So there's kind of multiple things within there. The other thing, just to kind of talk about the washing off, is, do we scrape off or not? And I know, because I've read lots of posts about this over the years, that there's a sort of bit of debate about, should we scrape off or shouldn't we scrape off? Again, this is something that has come from Dr. David Marlin. And the general consensus from David was not to scrape off, because you're able to keep your horse at a cooler temperature or cool them down quicker. There is a couple of exceptions to that. And so the first exception is saying, you know, if it's winter and actually you're just washing off a horse because perhaps they're sweaty from having a bigger coat and working, then of course in the winter you're not actually wanting to reduce the temperature significantly. You're wanting to just kind of deal with the sweat that has built up from being ridden. So perhaps in that situation, it's advised not to. But when it's particularly hot, we would advise wash the horse off and then don't scrape. If we got record temperatures, you know, probably unlikely in the UK to exceed over the sort of 100 you know, temperatures. But if we were to get over 104, the evidence suggests that actually you're wanting to wash that horse off multiple times. So start at the sort of head, wash that side, move around, do the next side and come back. And you just want to be, you see it at a lot of the big top eventing, there's often the groom there with a bucket of water and they're just looking to bring that temperature down of the horse. So using the sort of washing the horse off will help again keep them cooler. And of course, you don't have to ride, when it's particularly hot, we would sort of have a conversation about when might be the best time to ride. But again, there's no harm in giving your horse a bit of a wash up a couple of times a day, just to, again, bring that body temperature down and help them remain at a cooler temperature than had their skin have been dried.
I think it's really fascinating, that all that research has been done into cooling horses so effectively. And it's not just me that needs the factor 50.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I mean, in terms of some, there are obviously, in terms of that sort of sensitivity for sunburn, there are, of course, sunscreen products out there for horses. There are products that help sort of protect the physical area. But yeah, absolutely. I think, each horse will be different, a little bit like humans. They'll have sort of different ways in which they respond to the sun. But yeah, when we're getting sort of significantly high temperatures for a long period of time, which, let's be honest, in the UK, we don't always get long periods of heat, but with what we've got sort of coming, it really drives home that it's just worth considering how best to kind of help the horse comfortably manage their way through pretty extreme temperatures.
Yeah, that's fab. Thanks, Laura. And of course, then the horses generally in summertime are out grazing more, which brings then external and internal parasite risks are higher. You're just going to talk to us a little bit about fly control and, that those irritating beasts that surround us all.
Yeah, absolutely. So as a manufacturer of fly relief products, we do a little sort of happy dance when the flies come out, but as horse owners, we definitely don't. So, the flies and the midges obviously again provide a bit of a challenge for horse owners, and as I say, an average sort of horse or a fly bite, horse fly bites or sort of normal flies, midges, they're not they're pretty low key, might be a small pimple that appears. But of course, if they become a more significant bite, then they can become painful and become, a sort of sore or an ulcer. Again, some tips that we sort of share with horse owners around where to kind of check, make sure that you kind of inspect their underside, their legs, their neck seems to be quite, in front of, sort of in between their front legs, seem to be where the flies make a bit of a beeline. And I guess, that is stemming from the temperatures of, between the front legs are going to be naturally warmer than perhaps, on their bum, for example. So flies definitely cause more problems than the sun alone. And again, of course, horse owners will be using things like fly sprays and fly gels and citronella washes and all sorts of different potions. I know lots of horse owners take a homemade route to try and find something to help. And then from a physical sort of facial perspective, the horse's face, of course, we can look at a fly mask or various different type of fringes to help just keep not just the UV rays at bay, but to help those flies. Because when the flies, when we have that sort of period of time, 2 or 3 weeks for each of us, where the flies just seem to be everywhere, obviously for horses, it can be quite distressing.
Yeah, and they can get irritated in their eyes and things as well, can't they?
Yeah, no, absolutely. So fly masks are really helpful for that, not just from a UV perspective, but to stop, things like sort of pussy eyes where they're maybe getting sore, where they're kind of constantly blinking. But also I noticed the other day I was in the field poo picking, and I noticed one of the horses in the field was using his ears to sort of bat the fly away, but really quite aggressively. And it sort of got me thinking about how many hours he's out in the field and having to use quite a small part of his body as a sort of fly bat to keep them away. And I would imagine you build that over a period of time, it's going to be quite uncomfortable for the horse. But it was the other horses in the field had fly masks on, and they weren't having to work really hard to just enjoy a bit of grass, whereas this other one was on sort of full on fly attack and having to really work hard to keep the flies away from his ears, which was obviously annoying him, because you could sort of see the physical body language in it, just not a happy bunny.
And some just are more bothered than others, aren't they?
Yeah, absolutely. Some horses will be more bothered than flies than the others. So, if you've got a horse that is particularly sensitive, then they might become, more concerned by flies. Of course, ridden wise, again, some horses will become quite unrideable, or quite sort of keen to get away from the flies. So you've got to kind of look at the horse and decide whether how much the flies are bothering, and see if you can kind of help reduce that risk, and just drive the comfort up as much as possible.
Yeah. And Ros is asking, what would you recommend regarding washing fly rugs and masks?
Yeah, really great question. So I will answer on what we recommend of our products, but I guess the answer would be very similar for other products. I think a cool wash is the most important thing. So for most of our products, we recommend, fly rug, for example, no more than 30. Put it on a sort of delicate wash. Of course, you can take a hand washing route. It depends how bad and dirty, and whether the horse has really given a good roll in the mud. But we would always recommend a really nice, cool, light wash. Of course, consider your detergent to make sure that you're not using something that then will sit on the skin. And if you've got something that just needs a bit of a minor sort of midsummer wash up, then there's absolutely nothing wrong with perhaps getting a kettle of water and kind of just giving it a bit of a hand wash. But of course, because that fly, particularly for the fly mask, that's sitting over the eyes, you would want to make sure that fly mask is clean on the inside, because of course, again, if it's warm, there's a mask and there's lots of kind of dirt and grime in there, you're then potentially creating another issue. So nice lukewarm wash. Imagining you were washing a sort of expensive cardigan or silky pajamas or something, and just find the most delicate wash that your washing machine can cope with.
Fantastic. That's great. Thanks, Laura. And of course, we've got external parasites. As they graze, they're also going to be more at risk from internal parasites as well. That infection on the pasture, potentially, that's there, they're grazing more, they're more likely to pick it up. And especially horses on restricted grazing are going to be grazing closer to the piles of droppings potentially, which then is closer to those larvae that have escaped from the dung piles. Of course, we all do our poo picking, but the potential is there for more of that. So really, from our perspective and from a parasite control perspective, the importance is about just keeping up those regular worm egg counts. So this is our sort of guide program, if you like. So worm egg counts every season, so every 12 weeks for healthy adults. If you've got higher risk horses, so young or old, you're going to want to reduce that to 8 weeks, just to make sure that you've got that covered, because the redworm, that are the most predominant of all the parasites we see in horses, their life cycle is anything from like 4 to 6 weeks from egg to adult. So you can really quickly get a parasite problem that gets out of hand if you're not just watching that. The saliva test for tapeworm, we'd recommend that you do every 6 months. And that can either be spring and autumn, or summer, winter. So if you did your tapeworm treatment or your testing, then now's the time to keep up with that one as well. So it's something just to be aware of. And if you do need to treat, then getting those reduction tests in, just to make sure that chemical's been effective. So a follow-up worm egg count on that one. If you've got foals on the ground, if you're lucky, then please do get them treated proactively from 8 weeks till they're 6 months old as well, because they are much more immature immune systems, and that's really going to help and protect them from parasites on the pasture too. So we're going to look at bots as well. So both an internal and an external parasite of horses. They lay their eggs. So there's this waspy fly here in the top right, which lays these little tiny eggs on the horse's coat, and they're a bit of an irritant. So the horse will actually, gnaw it, try and lick them with the mouth. And that then is when they will go hatch and go into the mouth of the horse. And they will actually spend a few weeks. They go up between the back teeth of the horse and hatch into larvae and develop before they go down into the stomach of the horse. And then you get these little armadillo type of kind of shells embedded in the stomach of the horse. They overwinter, and then it's not until the following summer when they come out in the dung and you get this into the back into the wasp fly, and their life cycle continues. So we can't actually test for these guys. So if you're going to see them, then it's a bot knife like this to scrape the eggs off when you see them, to minimize what goes into the horse, and then something like either an ivermectin or moxidectin treatment in the winter that's going to break the life cycle of those ones after the first frost, so that there's no more bot flies there ready to reinfect. So that's those ones.
Yeah, it's interesting, Claire, isn't it? Because I think the other thing as well from that, what you've just been saying, is around the wormer resistance, and actually, that being really critical to kind of how we manage, the parasite management of the horses.
Yeah, absolutely. So, I mean, putting my money where my mouth is, poo picking really is the watchword for this. It's breaking the life cycle mechanically rather than having to rely on the chemicals, because we know that we're getting the resistance building up to the worming chemicals that we've got. So getting your poo picking done, doing cross grazing where you can, and not harrowing. I mean, that's really not effective in this country. It's not usually dry hot enough to break the dung open, get the UV light in and desiccate it. It really more will scatter it across the grazing areas, like closer to the lawns rather than any latrine areas that are there, and actually is a hindrance rather than a help from that side of things. So yeah, particularly during summer when it is nice and we can spend the time out there with the horses, do get your poo picking in. Do try and keep herds stable so that we're not going to mix them up and have reinfection or moving from field to field. Rest and rotate it where you can. Kind of difficult sometimes when you've got horses that are in a weightier side of things, shall we say. Weight management, always a tricky one this time of year. And then quarantining and testing new horses so they're not bringing in parasites as well, really is the best way forward for that one, particularly like through these summer months. And then I just wanted to have a bit of a chat about dung beetles, because these guys really are the dustbin men of the insect world. They're absolutely amazing. And because of them nesting, breeding, eating, and the way that they use the dung for their actual habitat, that can really help us from a waste disposal perspective. What they do actually is thought to minimize parasites as well on pasture. So they're really cool guys, but they have massively declined in the last few years because we use more wormers, and most of the wormers that we use are actually toxic to these dung beetles. So we've seen a big decline. But actually, if we looked after them, they could really help us. I mean, I had a little stat here about how much dung a horse produces, which for an average 16-hander is about 18 kilograms a day and 6.5 tons a year. So it's a lot of poo. And so if we spend half an hour poo picking every day, that really adds up through the year. But actually, if we could take a bit more care of these, then that in turn could really help us. So dung beetles really love the fresh dung. So that's what, they can fly 10 miles in to find a really good dropping. They're amazing creatures, and they will do their thing. There's different types of dung beetle, about 40 in this country, and they will use it in different ways. But on the left-hand side here is some of like a 3 or 4 day old poo after the dung beetles have been through it and been active. So very much kind of got rid of a lot of the bulk in there anyway. And so from a worm account or worm control perspective, we're advised that we want to do our poo picking twice a week is sufficient, because the eggs hatch after sort of 3-4 days into the larvae that then infect onto the pasture. So if we can leave the freshest ones for the dung beetles and pick them after they've had their kind of done their thing, if you like, then that's going to massively help them to increase their numbers on the pasture, and hopefully we can help to tip the balance so that they can be really useful for us as well, and then we can get that all working in our favor.
Yeah, I mean, you and I spoke about, of all the things, we spoke about dung beetles just the other day, and I was gobsmacked on a few things that you've just said there. Flying 10 miles to find, a nice fresh dropping, 6.5 tons a year, and then we wonder as horse owners why we have sore backs. So I think it's really interesting, because I know that just from my own experience as a horse owner, you've got quite a big group of horse owners who are super keen to sort of get out and poo pick every day, and actually it really sounds like, like you said, a couple times a week is much more helpful in terms of the parasite control. But I feel like we need to get a bit of David Attenborough on the side of the dung beetles, because they definitely sound like they're adding to what we need them to be doing from a kind of managing horses perspective. And of course, if we've got to not do a bit less poo picking or a bit less frequent, then nobody wants to be poo picking this Friday when we've got these extreme temperatures.
Yeah, absolutely. And we've got a few questions coming in about this. So Peter's asking how long we should rest a field to help with worm control, which is a great question. I mean, if you can do 3 months, that's a really great start. If you can do 6, then that's really going to help to start to see, particularly for the red worm, those larvae, or the eggs break down, and so the larvae won't be able to hatch. If you can do to a year, amazing. If you are talking more in terms of ascarid, which is a young horse parasite particularly, they have very hard, sticky shells, so they can last for up to 10 years in the soil. And so it's a reason why we'd really advise, if you have youngsters, not to use the same nursery paddock, but to rotate those around, because then it means that there is more chance of those degrading in the soil before you then expose the youngsters, to them by putting them out on the same pasture. So tapeworm is a bit of a different beast as well, because we've got a little orobatid mite, which is an intermediate host. So that's a grassland mite, tiny, which then eats the egg, and that's what's infective, running around on the pasture, but then inadvertently gets taken in by the horse. So they are a little bit more aversive to things like hot and cold, because they can get out of the way. So but yeah, 95% of a worm burden is going to be red worm. So really, if you're resting a few months, then that's, in a lot of times, it's great to be able to do that. So Tanith is asking, we have a lot of dung beetles and have got behind on our poo picking, and most of the poo looks like those on the left. So yeah, I guess the poo will over time anyway degrade. So as it gets wet and dry, that's going to wash that into the soil, and it's going to really help to break down the dung. What it's not going to impact so much is the parasite eggs that are in there. So yeah, it will degrade it, and that does happen sort of naturally. Claire's asking, I poo pick, but the fields around me don't poo pick. How far do worm larvae travel, and will their worms contaminate my field? It's a brilliant question. It's thought to be sort of between 1 meter and 3 meters for the red worm anyway, depending on how much rain has fallen. The wetter the better, they can travel further, but that's generally for red worm. If we're talking tapeworm, it's those little mites again, so they can probably travel a little bit further, and you might get cross-contamination from that perspective. So, but it's not going to be miles and miles anyway.
It's a great question, though, because when I remember, again, through a conversation with yourself, Claire, finding that out, and that is quite, when you think about the size of the we're talking about, and sort of 1, 2, 3. I know you said if it's wet conditions, they can kind of slide along a little bit further, but when you're looking at those areas in your field, because quite often horses are you know, kind of favoring sections of the field, aren't they, to do their droppings?
Yeah.
And then those areas become quite vast, and then you're spreading out 3 meters out from there. You know, for smaller grazing, I guess that, you know, you're taking quite a large area of the field that, you know, they can be traveling along.
Yeah, it means that there's a lot of infective pasture, really, if there is an area that's not poo picked. That then, because I mean, for example, redworm, they can lay tens of thousands of eggs a day because historically the horses were grazing and moving on. And so in order to even think about getting back inside of a horse to continue your life cycle, evolution really meant they had to put out a lot of eggs, and most of those larvae would shrivel up and die on the top of a blade of grass, just waiting for a horse to come along, or they'd be eaten by the wrong species and then they'd be toast anyway. So, you know, now because we keep horses in the same paddocks, small paddocks, and they graze back over and over the same land, that really plays into the evolutionary, into the parasite rather than the horse. So
yeah,
that's definitely something to be aware of. Oh, Sally says, I feel guilty not leaving fresh ones for dung beetles. Yeah. Well, you know, it's their habitat. So it is a little bit of a mindset shift because, you know, I know the poo picking obsessives that Laura is talking about. You know, I think a lot of us have been there. And so we just, we need to sort of rethink that a little bit. But it's fine to leave a few, particularly if they're just there for a couple of days. So Peter says he's noticed his burrowing in holes under the poo. So some of them will drag it down into the soil and like aerate it, fertilize it. I mean, all these, you could pay a lot of money to have that kind of ground management. So they do a really good job. So I've got a lot of passion for dung beetles, and I think they're underrated, and we need to look after them better because they could do well for us. But
definitely.
But I think we should get back onto the horse, and I think great for the environment to have them, and it's about balance, isn't it?
But
back to our horses, Laura.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And I think it is about balance, isn't it, with everything that we're doing with horses all of the time, whether that's balancing work-life balance, whether it's balancing temperatures or, you know, too hot, too cold, too wet, too dry, you know, it's that sort of old adage. So I just wanted to kind of, I guess, touch on some of the negative effects that the sun can have or the temperatures can have in terms of the routine around a horse. Of course, you know, hopefully, you know, it goes without saying that, you know, when it's particularly hot, it's worth considering, can you get up that bit early and ride before the heat of the sun kicks in? And I know lots of horse owners, when the sun comes out, you know, are riding at 6 o'clock in the morning, or on the flip reverse of that, kind of riding at 7 o'clock at night. What it's worth sort of just considering is that, you know, it will take 2 to 3 weeks of your horse being exercised in hot weather before they acclimatize. And often in the UK, we don't get that period of really significant hot weather before the temperatures drop back down again. And then off we go again. And then we get some warm weather. So, you know, the horses aren't just able to acclimatize sort of overnight. So it's worth bearing that in mind. Of course, you know, again, if your horse is carrying a little bit of extra weight, then naturally they are going to struggle a little bit more in the hot weather. So it is kind of really knowing your horse and knowing whether they're naturally hot or cold as a horse. You know, are they the horse in the winter that only has a lightweight rug on because they don't need it, or are they the horse that shivers at the first sign of, you know, the temperatures dropping? So weather will affect, the weight will affect, you know, your horse's ability to survive and cope. Traveling again can be quite tough on a horse, particularly during summer months. And, you know, you can lose the horse in terms of weight can lose between 3 to 5 kilograms per hour traveling in extreme heat. So, you know, that would mean, depending again on the weight condition of your horse, if you've got really lengthy travel and they are perhaps on the leaner side, you know, they could be losing a significant amount of weight. And of course, over a long period of travel, you know, we've all heard the stories of horses sort of getting stuck in traffic on motorways. You know, they are going to potentially, you know, dehydrate because they are warmer, and therefore, you know, they might need more water. Things like warming up at a show, again, just as a bit of a tip, you know, if you're at a show, it's worth considering, you know, can you shorten your warm up on your horse to allow for the extra stress on you and the horse? Because often I see competitors warming up in just their shirt. And I know rules have changed, but, you know, you often see the jacket going on at the last minute. Of course, the horse hasn't got the option to put his jacket on just as he goes up the centre line and not wear it in his warm up. Something I'm really passionate about, again, Equilibrium is really keen to kind of spread the word around breathability and leg protection. So, of course, you know, we want breathable leg protection all year round. But in the summer, it's going to be more important because naturally your horse is going to be warmer. Research actually shows when you heat the tendons up to 48 degrees for 10 minutes or more, you know, approximately 80% of those tendon cells die. So, you know, we want to make sure that if we are using leg protection, whether it be for ridden or turnout purposes, that we are making sure that we can go for a nice breathable option. If we don't need to use the protection, whether that be in the field or ridden, then of course that would be preferable because you're going to have nothing on the leg. But just make sure that your leg protection is not adding to the list of kind of problems for the horse during the summer months. Sometimes, especially, maybe not so much right now, but the last few weeks, we've had quite a lot of sun rain, grass is coming up, everywhere is super green. You know, we hear all the time that horses become more tricky to catch, and you know, they want to stay out in the nice freshly you know, the sugars are growing in the grass and it's nice and tasty, so they kind of say, no, not today, I don't want to come in from the field. So again, if you've got a horse that's tricky to catch, we know lots of horse owners will go for a head collar. Equilibrium are particularly passionate about head collars and head collar safety. Back in 2020, we did a survey of 5,500 horse owners, and 167 horses were reported having lost their lives as a result of a head collar accident. So, you know, really scary numbers.
That's a lot, isn't it, Laura?
Yeah. Especially when you consider, you know, out of 5,500, you know, and that wasn't injured, that was horses that lost their lives. And then there was countless other injuries from minor scrapes, bruises, invisible damage that you wouldn't see, you know, right through to kind of fractures and breaks and things. So, you know, off the back of that research, Equilibrium developed a head collar. It's designed to release at 83 kilograms. And of course, if anyone wants to find out about the Stella head collar, all the information's on our website. But it is another consideration in that period where the you know, where the grass is nice and sweet, the horse wants to stay out, but you want to bring them in, and perhaps you opt for a head collar to help catch them, to bring them in. Of course, again, you know, a little bit like everything, it's about that balance. But of course, the summer is going to bring hard ground. You know, depending on where you are in the country, that hard ground will appear much quicker. And likewise, in the winter, that hard ground suddenly becomes very soft, which brings its own issues. But we know that horses can get, you know, concussive stress, bones, joints, ligaments from hard ground. And we would really urge people to kind of avoid it if you can, if the ground is hard. But perhaps if you're lucky, find somewhere that's got sand tracks. You know, if you're lucky enough to have a gallops nearby you, but really do what you can to kind of consider the surface, because we are going to get to the point where it's going to become quite hard. Of course, if it's hard and uneven, then again, that kind of causes more challenges. So if it's particularly hard, you know, we would sort of be recommending that people sort of stick to walking as much as possible so that we don't look at other ailments. Of course, you know, summer can be quite tricky. You know, we've talked about the sort of inside going on of the horses and how we need to manage the parasites. But of course, summer can be another tricky time for managing horses' diet. So we know that potentially the most likely deficiency that we might find in a horse is going to be salt. And that's sort of all year round. So you might want to consider adding salts or electrolytes to replace those lost vitamins and minerals. Again, you know, thinking about a horse that's working hard in a sort of hot environment is losing between 2 to 4 gallons of water per hour. So, you know, that's a lot of water to be losing. So again, going back to the point I made before about perhaps, you know, adding some apple juice into the water to encourage them to drink more. Certainly offering them a drink sort of after being ridden will be helpful, but to consider that there's going to be more water being lost, and therefore additional vitamins and minerals are being lost through sweat. Of course, we've potentially, some of us are managing overweight horses, and, you know, that comes with its own challenges. You know, strip grazing can be helpful. A track system, you know, might be useful for horses to encourage them to be walking, you know, more significantly through the field rather than finding their favorite patch and head down and eating.
Yeah, big advocate of that.
yeah, I was going to say, I think your horses are on a track system, are they, Claire?
They are, and it's because he's not ridden at the minute with an injury, absolutely revolutionized his weight management. It's been brilliant. I sleep much better at night now, thanks to that. Yeah,
and I think as horse owners, it comes back to that balance point, doesn't it? We're always balancing something, and on the one hand, some of us are dealing with horses that are you and I suffer with the same thing with our horses, that they, you know, they're on the chubbier side, shall we say, and there's other people that will be dealing with trying to keep weight on a horse. So track systems are really helpful. Of course, some horse owners use, you know, muzzles to reduce the calorie intake. Of course, the other thing to consider with the horses in the summer, particularly those that were stable during the winter, perhaps hard fed, you know, getting hard feed in the winter and then not in the summer, is it might be that they're not getting all of the vitamins they need. So we've talked about salts being something that might be lacking, but of course just the general sort of vitamins and minerals. So something like a balancer is really helpful. We sell a sort of super concentrated balancer, which really kind of keeps the calories down but drives the vitamins and minerals into the horse. So, you know, if you're not sure if your horse is lacking, you know, there are some signs, of course, as with anything. Some of these signs could be other things, but it's worth just sort of talking through things like a lack of appetite. You know, of course, some horses are picky eaters, but, you know, you should sort of know whether that's maybe a bit of a change. And there's a difference in between sort of being a bit picky or perhaps having a more refined palate than perhaps just a lack of appetite. Sudden or gradual weight loss is something to look out for. Small amounts of hoof growth in between farrier visits. So if your farrier mentions that perhaps the horse is growing less hoof. Slow healing of wounds, again, can be a sign of lack of vitamins and minerals. Of course, things like tummy troubles, which might show themselves up in the drop-ins in the field or in the stable, and a sort of faded or dry coat. Of course, that's not an exhaustive list, but it hopefully just kind of highlights a few bits and pieces that are worth, in that summer months, just keeping an extra eye out for, to make sure that we're giving and getting the vitamins and minerals into the horse, that, you know, because of the change in routine, particularly from summer to winter.
They're great tips, Laura. And from the questions that are coming in, and looks like a couple of people also struggle with the same things as our horses do as well. So Sarah's asking, can the Stella head collar also be used with a grazing muzzle? Like, would that be a way to use that?
Yeah, absolutely. So the Stella head collar was actually developed off the back of another product that we sell, which is a muzzle protector. And the muzzle protector attaches to a head collar. And of course, the next obvious question when anyone was talking to us was, what do you guys do as safe, have you got a head collar? And we said no. So we developed the head collar off the back of the research, really closely linked to having a product that has to attach to a head collar that we were sending to various other manufacturers to kind of purchase the head collar. So absolutely, the muzzle the grazing muzzles will attach onto the Stella head collar, and of course, if the horse then gets in a tricky spot. So we've heard awful stories of, just at Your Horse Live last year, I heard about a horse who sadly lost its life. It drowned. Its head collar got stuck. It was having a drink of water in the water trough. Head collar got stuck and couldn't get itself released, and unfortunately drowned. And the horse owner went up the yard that afternoon and found the horse's body. So the Stella head collar will absolutely work with a grazing muzzle if you're looking to kind of help reduce the calories, but you've got the extra safety of knowing, should something happen, they decide to attach themselves to a tree, or goodness knows what else these horses get up to in the field, that the Stella will drop. It drops from pole pressure, and there's two safety release poppers either side of the headpiece, so the headpiece will just come off, and the potential sort of disaster or incident will be managed.
Gosh, yeah, disaster averted. What a horribly sad story.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And the more we talk about the sort of head collar safety side of things, the more, unfortunately, we hear of so many stories that are horses getting themselves in a bit of a situation and they just can't get out of it. And whether that's cantering round a showground with the side of a lorry attached to them, I've heard a 5-bar metal gate being dragged round a yard, and then the horse fell over, and it potentially can be avoided if you've got a head collar that has been tested and can kind of, if a situation happens, can helpfully get your horse out of the slight situation it's got itself into.
Yeah, stuff of nightmares, I would say, for a horse owner. That
absolutely.
So, well, tenuously, we were still on diet and management. Just wanted to cover off as well the potential for horses ingesting sand. That can be a geographical thing depending on where they're grazing, but also then if they are strip grazed, on bear grazing, track systems, lotted on a menage or something like that, sand surface to be fed, that just be really careful of the horse ingesting sediment or sand, because that can then in the gut actually manifest as a sand colic, and it puts them at risk of that anyway. So one thing that you can do is a fecal sedimentation test. Something you can do at home, but it's also something that we offer here in the lab, and we will sediment that out and also give a percentage of any sand that's present, so that if you want to retest, then you've got a statistical comparison to know that any measures are working. So for that, some horses, I did it with my own horse. He was grazing sandy soil, and he actually had a 5% sand content of his dung, which it's fairly high, but we've had a lot higher when horses have been tested. One poor little horse had 40% sand from where they were grazing, and obviously that is a real concern. So you can either, the research says, feed ad lib hay. Unfortunately, that's not an option for my weight challenged pony that I have. Much as he would love to be fed ad lib hay, it's not a thing. The other thing is there's lots of proprietary products out there as well, a lot of them based on psyllium husk that you can add to the feed. And I know certainly World Horse Welfare and who graze very sandy soil in their Norfolk farm will do that routinely, particularly through the summer when the horses are out grazing, just to make sure that that's dealt with and that they're not storing up a problem there from a colic situation. So yeah, just wanted to add that one in as well, just on the diet and care front.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, because I think you're naturally trying to reduce, on the one hand, trying to reduce the calories and therefore potentially putting the horse onto poor grass, which then throws up potentially other things to kind of manage and balance, doesn't it?
Exactly. Yeah. So, but we can check that, if you're taking a worm egg count sample anyway, we just need a few more pots, and then we can do that in the lab and just double check. And sometimes it's worth doing, even if you don't suspect it, to know whether or not you've got a susceptible horse, the way they graze, or the geographic, like the location, the soil type of where you're at. So yeah, just something else that we are able to offer from a horse health perspective that's proved helpful to lots of people. So
yeah, and also horse owners won't necessarily know perhaps where the horse was before, so you might not be in a sandy area now, but that's not to say that the horse didn't spend the first 5 years of their life in a really sandy area. So it's always worth, like you say, knowing what the sort of baseline is, isn't it?
It is, definitely. And we do know people and have advised horse owners actually to move their horses to a less sandy area when they couldn't negate what the horse was actually ingesting, and then that risk was there. And of course, no one wants that risk in their horse, because it's a ticking time bomb. Colic's so hard to treat, isn't it? So
yeah, no, absolutely.
One of the potential causes. Yeah. So we've got a question coming in about dung beetles. So someone's asking about they've just wormed their horses, and what should they do for dung beetles. It's actually advised to take the horse off the pasture, or if you can, to poo pick that very regularly to remove it, so dung beetles don't get into the toxic metabolites that are passed through in the dung. So it's like 48-72 hours that will take usually to go through the horse's system. If you can target wormers, which means that only some horses are treated and some are not treated, it means there's some non-toxic dung there for the beetles to enjoy, so that will help them too. And then there are also certain chemicals that are more toxic. So ivermectin is the worst, moxidectin is moderately less toxic, and then some of the other some of the other wormers aren't toxic to dung beetles at all, like the pyrantels and praziquantels and things like that. So but yeah, we can advise on that as well if anybody needs any support on what to worm with following test results and things like that. So,
and I think I know the answer to this, Claire, but you said that if you didn't treat all of the horses in the field, it would leave some non-toxic dung in the field. Are these clever little dung beetles that we're championing, would they be able to kind of hunt out the non-toxic?
From what I've read, yes. So Dr. Bainon, who's a entomologist who's working out of the what's it called? In Wales. They've got a centre anyway where they're very passionate about all beetles, insects, but particularly dung beetles, and that is their advice, that will actually help them. Yeah.
That's good to know.
Yeah, good to know. Yeah, so I think that kind of rounds out our gallop through sort of summer months and horse health and everything else on the formal side of things. So I think we're going to draw the competition now with our winners. So hopefully from behind the scenes we'll have some winners drawn from all of the entries that I've seen coming in, which is brilliant. Thanks for that. So we'll announce those shortly, and then we'll go on and take some more questions if anybody has any. So yeah, please feel free to type away any questions and we can get on that. And then hopefully we'll also have some names for you. Here it comes in. Okay, so the random spot prize winner of the Westgate bundle is Tanith Strugnall. So congratulations to you, Tanith. If you'd like to pop your email across or your address to us on a DM, then we'll be able to get that out to you. And we'll have a drum roll for the Equilibrium fly mask as well that they're very kindly putting forward. So in a minute. Okay, answers in. Thanks, Kat. The random spot prize winner of the Equilibrium fly mask is Fiona McLean. So well done to you, Fiona. And again, just pop us a DM to either pages. We can share that information, and then we can, you'll have to pick which one you want, and we can get that sent out to you. So that's brilliant.
Yeah, brilliant. Well done, Fiona. And it'll just be a case of, absolutely choosing which fly mask will suit your horse. So have a little look on the website, and then let us know which one suits your horse and what size you're after.
Perfect. Oh, that's great. Well, it's been fantastic to have so many of you join us. And if you want to watch again and you've got any questions, then do reach out and we'll very happy to answer any questions, support wherever we can to help you get through this. And we'll just have to see what happens this weekend, won't we, Laura?
We'll see whether the weatherman got it right, and hope, the temperatures certainly look warm. Whether they'll tip the 30 will remain to be seen, won't it? But yeah, if anyone's got any questions, absolutely comment, and we'll do our best to answer them. We'll be monitoring the event, the chat post the event. Any questions on anything that we've spoken about, again, message Westgate or the Equilibrium page, and more than happy to help. And hopefully around surviving summer with your horses, you can all perhaps enjoy a barbecue or something cold in the garden, of course in the sun with some protective spray, but hopefully you don't need a fly mask or anything quite as significant as that for yourself out in the garden.
Yeah, but then enjoy summer with the horses. I mean, this is really what it's all about, isn't it? Minor irritations, but actually, what a fabulous season. And
it's what we wait for in the winter when it's dark and cold, isn't it? So absolutely, a bit of preparation and a bit of a consideration on how we might need to adjust it up. And getting up in the light and seeing the horses in the morning and seeing the horses certainly at the other end of the day and still being light is definitely what makes the winter hard work. So for sure, enjoy.
Definitely that. Yeah, that's fantastic. Well, yeah, thanks very much, Laura, for joining us. And we'll see you around, guys. Thanks for joining us.
Thanks, everybody.
Bye now.
Bye. Bye-bye.